Hi everyone. So in this video, we're going to be talking about spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis falls under the purview of gametogenesis, and gametogenesis is the biological process in which a diploid or haploid precursor cell undergoes cell division and eventual differentiation to form mature haploid gametes that upon fertilization form a diploid organism, right? And spermatogenesis, or the creation and or generation of sperm, falls under this purview of gametogenesis. So in the previous video, we spoke a little bit about the egg and sperm cells, right, our two gametes. And like I said just recently, spermatogenesis is the generation of sperm production. Okay, so let's take a look at some structures that aid in sperm production. Of course, we all know that the testes are the primary sources of sperm production. And there are a few different anatomical locations and terms I want you all to be familiar with. The first are the seminiferous tubules. The seminiferous tubules are going to be located within the testes, and they are specific in that this is the site of meiosis, in which subsequent male gametes, spermatozoa, are going to be created. The next structure I want you to be familiar with is the epididymis. The epididymis is going to be the location in which sperm is going to be stored and matured. Okay. And during sexual arousal, the epididymis will contract and allow for sperm to enter the next structure, the ductus deferens. That's the Latin way of saying it. You may be familiar with it as the vas deferens. And this is just a long muscular tube that travels from the end of the epididymis into the pelvic cavity just behind the bladder. And the vas deferens will transport mature sperm to the urethra in preparation for ejaculation. Here is a cross-section of the testes. And here we see these cells here, and these cells are called Leydig cells. Leydig cells are cells that produce testosterone, and this testosterone aids in production of sperm. Okay, testosterone is also going to be produced in the presence of a specific gonadotropic hormone known as luteinizing hormone, which we'll talk about in the next video. And luteinizing hormone is produced by specific gonadotropic cells found in the anterior pituitary gland that sits in the base of your skull. And these gonadotropic cells release other gonadotropic hormones that allow for proper sex organ function. Okay, so what I mean by this is luteinizing hormone allows for the production of both estrogen in females and then testosterone in males. And again, we can see there are these, it's kind of faint, but this is the lumen of a seminiferous tubule. And this is the cross-section of a seminiferous tubule. Okay. So here is a very common diagram of how sperm is created. The key here is that, well, let's go through this step by step. In this particular section here, spermatogonium is generated from a male germ cell that is diploid. These spermatogonia are going to be self-regenerating, and with each division, you produce a primary spermatocyte and another spermatogonium. The thing here is that when a primary spermatocyte is generated, the genetic material in this primary spermatocyte is replicated and not duplicated. Okay, so the difference here is that replication is the synthesis of an exact replica of DNA, while duplication is the doubling of the amount of DNA as a result of replication. Okay, so in this case, we're just replicating our chromosomes, but yet we still have now um, two sister chromatids per chromosome that are attached via a centromere. Okay. Uh, After the degeneration of a primary spermatocyte, we go through our first meiotic division, generate secondary spermatocytes that now are going to be haploid in number of chromosomes, right? So they have half the number. And then we go through our second meiotic division, which is very similar to that of mitosis, where all we're doing is replicating our cells. We generate spermatids, again, and they're all going to be haploid. And then finally, we mature and differentiate into what we know as sperm. So what aids in this maturation process of sperm, in sperm? Well, what I want you to get from this picture is that there are going to be these cells present that are going to aid and nourish the maturing sperm cells. These cells are called Sertoli cells, and we see that we have a male germ cell that starts off here, let's say at the top, right, and then eventually it matures and differentiates into what we know as mature sperm or spermatozoa. And eventually they're going to be shed into the lumen of a seminiferous tubule. Here's a diagram I actually created to highlight this process in a much more simpler fashion. So on this side, right, we have the basement membrane, we have the spermatogonium. It goes through mitosis to replicate itself. We get it, and we generate a primary spermatocyte. Go through subsequent meiosis, meiosis 1, meiosis 2, generating a secondary spermatocyte and then a spermatid. And finally, we differentiate into haploid sperm that is released into the lumen of a seminiferous tubule. Eventually, you may be wondering, well, how does this differentiation and maturation occur? How do we get the shape of the sperm? Well, we actually get the shape of the sperm through compartmentalization of only the things that we need for the sperm to penetrate that egg when it's time to fertilize the egg. So, like I said, the sperm is released into the epididymis, and then it begins to mature there. And eventually, the cytoplasm starts to shrink, and we formulate residual bodies with mostly cytoplasm, as we see here. And eventually, we form a sperm that we all are familiar with, right? Where we have a head, a neck, a midpiece, and a tail, right? The head has an acrosome in it with those enzymes. It has a centriole in the head, as well as the nucleus. We have a midpiece lined with mitochondria, and we have a tail that is used for movement. And finally, I just want to show you a electron scanning micrograph of what a sperm looks like. So here is our acrosome. This is the plasma membrane. Okay, here's a transverse section of a cross section of the flagellum. And we see here's an axoneme, which is the motor of the flagellum. Here we have some fibers. We have mitochondria that line here, and then again you can see again mitochondria lining the midpiece here. We have these fibrous ribs. Um, yeah, And this is what a sperm looks like under a microscope. And so thanks for watching this video. Check out the next video on oogenesis.